For the first time ever, Part D drug plans and Medicare Advantage plans will have a cap on prescription drug costs. Coming up next, we'll show you a summary of 2024 Part D coverage, as well as a glimpse into 2025. Medicare Part D has 4 phases of coverage, but starting in 2024, you don't have to worry about the final phase called catastrophic. And that's because you no longer owe a copay when you reach this phase, which creates a cap. Let's take a look. Before we get started, here's some quick notes. Whether you have a standalone Part D drug plan or a Medicare Advantage Part C plan that includes Part D coverage, they all follow the same guidelines set by Medicare. Also, the assumption here is your medications are covered on your plan's formulary list of drugs. For non-covered drugs, you will be responsible for paying the full cost. And if you take insulin, you will pay no more than $35 for a 30-day supply from the get-go. The Part D deductible will not apply. But the insulin must be covered on your plan's formulary list of drugs. And then if you happen to take insulin through a pump, that is also capped at $35. But it actually goes through your Part B medical insurance, not your Part D drug coverage. Okay, here's a visual description of the 4 phases of Part D drug coverage in 2024. Let's take one phase at a time. A deductible is what you owe before the insurance carrier helps, which in 2024, Medicare has set at $545. Some plans have a deductible that applies to all drug tiers, while others have it apply only on certain tiers. And there are even some plans with no deductible at all. If your plan does have a deductible, you will owe the full cost of the applicable drugs until you meet the deductible. Also, this is a calendar year deductible, so once it's met for the year, you move on to the next phase. Next up is the initial coverage phase. This is where your Part D plan begins to pay the bulk of a covered drug's cost. It's tier-based pricing. Typically, generic drugs are Tier 1 or Tier 2, brand name drugs are usually Tier 3 or Tier 4, and then specialty drugs are Tier 5. Some plans even have a Tier 6, but those are normally low-cost generics or certain diabetic drugs at special pricing. Based on the drug's tier classification, you will pay a copay or a coinsurance percentage until you reach $5,030 of total gross drug costs. Gross costs are what the drugs actually cost, not just your portion. It's what you paid plus what the insurance plan paid on your behalf. So if a drug's gross cost is really $500, but you only have a $40 copay, the full $500 is applied toward reaching the $5,030 amount. Depending on your list of medications, you could reach $5,030 in gross drug costs in just a few short months or at some other point later in the year. If you get there, you're in the next phase of Part D, the coverage gap, also known as the donut hole. 2024 is the final year of the donut hole phase. Yes, you heard that right. The donut hole will no longer be an issue after 2024. The donut hole phase of Part D is where you pay 25% of your drug's full cost. This amount could be higher or lower than what you paid in the initial coverage phase. It just depends on the plan. For some drugs like generics, the costs might not change much. For others, like brand name and specialty drugs, the cost could go up substantially because you're now paying 25% of a pretty big number. It's like this until you reach $8,000 of true out-of-pocket costs, or TROOP. But the $8,000 TROOP is not a real number, not to you at least. In reality, you'll need to spend about $3,300 out of your pocket to reach the TROOP. And that's because in the donut hole, you get credit for 70% of the cost of your brand name drugs, which is paid by the drug manufacturer behind the scenes. So that's what makes up the difference between your roughly $3,300 in copays and the $8,000 TROOP. Here's a quick visual of what gets you to the $8,000 TROOP. TROOP is calculated by adding up these 4 items: your costs in the deductible phase, your costs in the initial coverage phase, your costs in the coverage gap donut hole phase, and 70% of the brand name costs in the coverage gap donut hole, which is paid by the manufacturer. Catastrophic is the final phase. Starting in 2024, if you reach the catastrophic phase, you're done for the year. You no longer owe anything for covered medications on your plan's formulary list of drugs. As mentioned previously, this ends up being about $3,300 out of your pocket for the year. This is a huge deal for the Medicare beneficiaries taking very expensive Tier 5 medications. In 2024, they will hit their max, probably pretty quickly, and then you're done for the year. We will link to a very thorough analysis by the Kaiser Family Foundation in the video description below, detailing the path to the roughly $3,300 max. Now to wrap up, here's a sneak peek into 2025 Part D coverage. In 2025, the donut hole will finally be gone, and there will be a $2,000 cap on prescription medications. This means only the deductible and initial coverage phases will be relevant to a Medicare beneficiary. Part D is about to get really simple starting in 2025. Hey, if you like this video, be sure to watch our other videos right over here. Thanks for watching.